Welcome back inside Gillette Stadium, everybody. My name is Mike Petraglia, joined as always by Patriots expert columnist for WEEI.com, Christopher Price. All right, Chris, it is Patriots Broncos week, but more specifically, it is Tom Brady-Peyton Manning week. Brady-Manning week, number 16 in this great rivalry, number 16 in the edition. And it has been Tom Brady who has, for the most part, dominated this rivalry overall, winning 10 of the previous 15 meetings, but the two are tied in the postseason, 2 apiece, and actually Peyton Manning leads an AFC Championship contest 2-1. But all that aside, it appeared to me, and I think you as well today, when Tom Brady was talking about the rivalry, that he's finally starting to savor it. It's not something that he dreads talking about. It's not the same old cliches. He actually says to everybody, the media here on hand on Wednesday, yeah, it is something special to be part of.
He's gotten some perspective on it. I think as you get older, I think you developed an appreciation for what this means, not just to these two franchises, but to the National Football League in general. Look, we've been very lucky to see the majority of the previous 15 matchups between these two quarterbacks. I think we're going to see another great one here on Sunday between these two teams for really supremacy, at least as it stands right now in the AFC.
Now, something that Brady brought up is, and one of the reasons I found interesting, Chris, that he appreciates Peyton Manning at the age of 38 and Tom Brady comes in at the age of 37, is the commitment to being excellent. Not just the commitment to playing week in and week out in the NFL, but the commitment it takes to play at the level that Peyton Manning's at. And that, I think, is why Tom Brady appreciates it, because those two quarterbacks alone really are the two quarterbacks you think of for not only longevity in the National Football League, but at a Hall of Fame caliber.
There's no half-assedness with these two guys. And I don't know if we can say it, but there's no there really is. With these two guys, there is a commitment to excellence, to borrow the old Raiders phrase, when you're talking about these two guys and what they do and what they mean to their respective franchises. We saw it for years with Peyton in Indianapolis. He was the guy who was able to lift that franchise to greater and greater heights.
Right.
We see it here on a weekly basis with Tom Brady. Both of these teams take their cue from their quarterbacks. And even though both of these teams have great pieces around them on both sides of the ball, ultimately these two teams will go as far as both of these great veteran quarterbacks will take them. So I do think that there is a real level of appreciation on both sides, not just with Tom, but with Peyton as well, when you're talking about what this rivalry means, what this game means between these two teams.
I know you were talking about this with me off camera, Chris, but Tom Brady seemed as loose as I can remember him being in a press conference prior to taking on Peyton Manning, even cracking a Halloween joke about, well, we've got to make sure we put the nails in the coffin when we have a chance, and then he, without missing a beat, says, yes, that's a Halloween reference. Of course, that'll be on Friday before the big game on Sunday. But I think, to Brady's point, I know you're writing about this on WEEI.com, getting the lead and playing from ahead is absolutely vital when you're taking on Peyton Manning, and Brady knows this.
One of the reasons the Patriots have been successful as they've been over the last month, 3 of those 4 games they've gotten out to an early lead. They've been able to control the tone of the game. They've controlled the tempo. They've kept the other team on their heels. It is absolutely imperative to gain a quick lead on this team. Gronk talked about it last week, about the importance of getting off to a fast start, developing a real sense of offensive rhythm. We saw it against the Bears. They're going to need to continue that going forward this week against the Broncos, because the Broncos really are comfortable at playing from ahead and playing with a lead. I wonder, as a result, I wonder if we're going to see, if the Patriots do win the coin toss, I wonder if they're going to accept it as opposed to deferring, because it is such, you want to get off to a quick start every week. It's absolutely important to get off to a quick start every week. But when you're talking about the Broncos, one of the keys to success is keeping Peyton Manning off the field. You want to be able to control the time of possession, and I think that's one of the points of emphasis for this Patriots team going into this game.
One of the few changes on offense for the Denver Broncos, not many, from a record-setting offense that was the case last year, got them to the Super Bowl before, of course, they lost to the Seattle Seahawks, is at the wide receiver position. They obviously lose Eric Decker to the New York Jets, and they replace him with Emmanuel Sanders. A lot of talk in the offseason about whether or not the Bill Belichick and company should have gone after Emmanuel Sanders a little more aggressively. Actually, a couple of years ago, when they tendered him an offer sheet from the Pittsburgh Steelers, they did not. They actually got their guy, Brandon LaFell, and that turned out pretty well, certainly on Sunday against the Chicago Bears. But if you're Bill Belichick and Matt Patricia, how do you go about defending now that you have Darrelle Revis in the secondary along with Brandon Browner? How do you go about defending and limiting the damage of Peyton Manning?
I think you're looking at a couple of different matchups now. Let's operate now with the understanding that you're not talking about individual man-on-man matchups for the entire game. But if you're the Patriots, have to figure you feel pretty comfortable with a combination of Demaryius Thomas against Darrelle Revis.
Right.
And then you can work in Arrington in the slot against Welker. And then you might feel a little bit dicey about the idea of going with Alfonso Dennard against Sanders. Depending on how healthy Dennard is. I think one of the reasons why he didn't play on Sunday against the Bears, they wanted him to be completely healthy for this week. Really, to my mind, and we talked about this before off air, really the matchup that I think might give the Patriots problems is Julius Thomas. Because do you put Brandon Browner on him, a bigger guy who has some cornerback skills but is not quite a safety type, who might be able to do a little bit of both things? Or do you risk using someone like Jamie Collins on him, a guy who struggled in coverage over the course of the year, as well as struggled last year mightily with Thomas in the AFC Championship game?
I cannot imagine the Patriots would be that comfortable based on what they have seen on film from Jamie Collins in pass coverage the last couple of weeks.
Exactly. So then do you think, okay, well, we're going to use Brandon Browner against him, and you put Collins in maybe more of a pass rush role, and you use newcomer Jonathan Casillas in that coverage role that Collins has been used in previously. So you have a few options when you're talking about trying to defend Peyton Manning. I think the one area you feel pretty good at, and it's weird to say when you're talking about the Patriots defense, you might want the Broncos to run the ball. You would welcome the idea of the Broncos running the ball. Denver putting the game in the hands of someone like Ronnie Hillman as opposed to having him throw the ball around the field 45 times.
All right, let's talk about some of the news of the day. Obviously, the Patriots got their first look at Akeem Ayers last week. Who are some of the new faces that we can expect to see on the field on Sunday? Jonathan Casillas, a possibility?
Jonathan Casillas is a possibility. Casillas is more of a coverage linebacking type. I know Bill talked about him this morning as more of a four-down guy,
right.
But I think right now, as it stands, he might be more of that coverage linebacker, that guy who kind of gives you a little bit of flexibility in there, can work in on third downs as opposed to someone like a Hightower. For what it's worth, I think Hightower has improved in coverage, but I think Casillas might be one of those guys who might be able to help out. Also has some special teams value. The other guy we saw today, they made the signing official today, is Alan Branch.
Right.
Branch is a guy who, if he's healthy, has some possibility, has some positional versatility, played some defensive end, played some defensive tackle. Right now, at least to me, he projects as a complementary player when you're talking about someone lining up next to Vince Wilfork and maybe providing a little bit of depth on a defensive line that's really been thinned by injury to both Silver Salinga and Chandler Jones.
Based on what you've written on WEEI.com, Chris, no blockbuster deals before the trade deadline. You view Casillas and Alan Branch pretty much as depth guys.
Yeah, exactly. At this point, you could throw Akeem Ayers into that mix as well. If you're taking a view of the Patriots and what they did at the trade deadline, you look at Ayers, you look at Casillas, and you look at Alan Branch, and you feel pretty good about where you are on defense right now. You add some depth. Again, I want to see Ayers long-term. I know we talked about that last week. See if his knees can hold up over the course of a full 16-game season, whatever. See if Branch can play his way into shape. I don't think Branch is going to be the kind of guy who's going to make an impact this week. I think I would look for him to be more of an impact player going forward after the bye. Remember, he hasn't played any football at all over the course of the year, so it's going to take him a little bit of time to get up to speed. Casillas, again, is one of those coverage linebacking types who will also provide some special teams value.
So Casillas probably plays and Branch not so much.
Yeah, if you have to guess between the two, I would say Casillas probably in a limited fashion, maybe a handful of snaps, not unlike what we saw from Akeem Ayers last week, but I don't think Branch is going to be ready to play this week.
All right, a bit of housekeeping on Alan Branch. Pro Football Talk.com is reporting that the DUI case that actually precipitated his release from the Buffalo Bills one day after signing an extension with Buffalo this past August has been resolved. That was not something the Patriots reportedly, according to Pro Football Talk, required, but it's something they did prefer, so that has been resolved, also meeting a requirement of the new substance abuse policy of the National Football League to get that business done by November 1st and avoid any potential suspension. So that bit of news, and I think it is good news for the Patriots, is out of the way. So what happens on Sunday, Chris?
I think New England wins this thing just barely. I think they're able to execute at the same level they were against the Bears. I think they do come out of this thing with a win. I think that you're going to need to contain the passing game, obviously. You're going to need to figure out a way to put together some extended drives. Denver's one of the best teams in the league, if not the best team in the league against the run, especially over the last month or so. So you're going to have to figure out a way to move those chains, keep Manning off the field, put together some 7, 8, 9-minute drives, and really keep that Denver offense as far away from the field as possible. I also think you're going to need some sort of balance. And whenever these two teams meet here, they've had some odd thing happen, whether it's a special teams play, whether it's a fumble, whatever it is. I think you're going to see one of these this week, but ultimately I think the Patriots end up winning this thing 28-27.
It'll be 2 days after trick or treat, and certainly the Patriots are looking for a treat. I should ask you, and I think we'd be remiss A couple of years ago around Halloween, actually a couple of weeks before, we had that freak snowstorm. On Sunday, the forecast is calling for temperatures in the low to mid 30s, dipping possibly into the upper 20s with a chance of precipitation starting out as rain, maybe even some snow flurries by the end of the game. How does that play in?
I think it's in the advantage of the Patriots. I think when you're talking about these two teams, and when these two teams have met in the past, when it's been bad weather, it's been very good for New England. Last year, the AFC Championship game, you remember, we went out there, it was 68 degrees. It was one of the warmest days in Colorado that I could ever recall. So I think that played into the Broncos' hands. I think bad weather this week plays in New England's favor.
All right, be sure to follow all of the news leading up to and including the game on WEEI.com. It is what it is. WEEI.com. Christopher Price, Ryan Hannibal, and yours truly will have the game covered wall to wall, and we look forward to it. It should be another great game. How could it not be? The 6-1 Broncos coming into Foxborough to take on the 6-2 Patriots, riding a 4-game winning streak. Christopher Price, I'm Mike Petraglia. Happy Halloween, everybody. WEEI.com.